Here's Shed. Off the window, no. Roberts tried to get it. Shed for the win. Got it. Jamal Shed plays the hero again.
Back to pass. Donovan Smith. Smith steps up in the pocket, unloads it, throws it all the way downfield into the end zone. Tipped, and it is caught. Caught by the Cougars. Caught for a touchdown. Unbelievable. Caught by Stephon Johnson.
Stick it in your pipe and smoke it, baby. Yes!
Welcome to the Scott Holm podcast, back after what can only be called, I think, the most complete and certainly the most satisfying Cougar football win of the now half-completed, time really does fly, Bobby, 2024 Cougar football season. A really awesome one that happened to fall on probably the busiest work week of the year for both co-hosts of this show, but time waits for no podcast, certainly not this one. Certainly couldn't not come back here and talk about an incredibly good Cougar football win. Obviously, we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of the game itself here in a bit, Bobby, but you were there for this one in person. How was it like finally seeing kind of the proof of concept? I mean, you were at the Oklahoma game, which was, I think, a very good effort, one that wasn't that far from getting a win.
Probably our third best performance, maybe even second best performance. I'd make the argument.
Oh yes, I'd say second, just considering the opponent. I mean, yeah, you beat Rice, and yeah, yay, we didn't lose to Rice 2 years in a row. But yeah, no, I mean, you have been the top two performances this season, including this one, number one. What was that like in person, man?
Dude, it's great. It's so much more fun to watch Cougars win in any sport that they play. It's just a better experience, you know. Not to compare to the two sports or anything like that, but it's a lot more fun when you win a game versus when we lost to TCU, in women's basketball. Like, it's just a lot more fun to go to those games. Heck, it's more fun to go to a game that you win where you kind of dominate an opponent over even a good performance like we had at Oklahoma. It's always fun to be the fan on the road as long as you're not an asshole about it, right? Because you can sometimes get a little too far. As long as you're a little self-deprecating and you're not, being too rude and in their face about it, you can usually have a pretty good time. And that right there, Sam, is what we call growth, because about 10, 12 years ago, I might not have said the same thing, but it actually is a lot of fun. You meet some cool people and you get to see what their fan bases are going through and what their fan bases kind of think of us, not as a fan base, but of our team.
Yeah, you get kind of that outsider perspective. You could sort of hear from his audio. Bobby is coming to us live from parts unknown. We're treating it like it's a big state secret, a city in Tennessee that shares the name of a ancient Egyptian city as well. I am in my home base, but I am. You never heard of Memphis?
Now it's not a secret anymore, buddy.
Oh, there we go. You're making a face like
I didn't know it was an ancient Egyptian city.
Public school.
Public school. You were a private school kid. Those are the things they teach you in private school.
That's fair. Coming to you from not so parts unknown. Me coming to you from not so parts unknown, but in my work shirt. That's just how busy of a week this has been. And got of course mention here real quick our good friends at Charlie Hustle, charliehustle.com, makers of incredibly comfortable vintage collegiate wearables, including a great collection of Houston Cougar wearables. Use our promo code PAWD15, that is POD15. In doing so, you will save 15% off your order from Charlie Hustle. You're going to look good doing it. I'm going to a happy hour from this busy work week, and I'm almost certainly going to be wearing one of my fantastic Charlie Hustle tees, a little bit more casual affair than the one I've been at the last couple days. Of course, support our friends at the 1012 Network, our network partners at TN12 Network, wherever you do social media. I believe that is all the housekeeping here. Oh, patreon.com/SH podcast. For as little as 16 cents a day, you could support the work that Bobby and I do here on a weekly basis, talking about your Houston Cougars, like many of you have done. We have seen an uptick during the season, and we appreciate those of you who just joined us there, and really, really appreciate those of you who've been with us for now a number of years. It feels very surreal to us here. So, got to get to it. The happy main subject of our podcast tonight, a 30-19 win by your Houston Cougars over the TCU Horned Frogs. And I kind of knew this one was different. I mean, you couldn't know this from the first drive, but you finally, in this one, the first, after the last game, you move the ball more than you would think a 34-0 game would indicate against Cincinnati, but it wasn't a good offensive performance, however you sliced it. And Iowa State, yes, you had a couple of painful near scoring opportunities or near misses in that one, but felt like an honest shutout. It felt like a game where, the 0 was indicative of the level of offensive success that you had against Iowa State. And it never really felt like, even after that first drive that stalled out on 4th down in TCU territory, at that point I was like, well, at least we moved the ball. Like, I'm not going to say I got ahead of my skis after one drive, but I was like, okay, I don't think we're going to get shut out today. And then emphatically, you saw that 4 different scoring drives in the first half. Like 4 different scoring drives in the first half. It was really, really incredible stuff. TCU did have points to get back into it, but my biggest picture thought, Bobby, before we do our annual or for this season segment starter with our 3 overlooked plays, is that it was a 30-19 win, and it wasn't one that the Cougars were fortunate to win. The Cougars were very much the better team in Fort Worth on Friday night, and that was cool. That my big picture thought is, this is the first time since now in our second season of the Big 12, much as I enjoyed the 2 Big 12 wins that we got last year, West Virginia Hail Mary and winning Baylor in OT, those were extraordinarily close games. Like this was not one. This was one where you won by 2 scores. Yes, TCU had chances to get back in this, but you never trailed, won by 2 scores.
It never really felt in doubt.
Never really felt like, I'm a paranoid Cougar fan, so I'm not going to say when it was 24-19 and TCU had the ball that I wasn't clenching a little bit, but you were the better team. And I don't think anyone would debate that one, buddy. So I think kick this off, as we usually do. What are your 3 overlooked plays from the Cougars' victory over TCU?
Yeah, so just kind of some of my high-level thoughts, too, is I thought this team looked really good, right? The offense actually looked like it clicked. There were times, right, and I remember texting you during the game, which is always fun when you're at the game and somebody's watching, because you can't text them right away when something happens. You got to give it like 45 seconds, right? You got to be like, all right, the next play is about to run. Man, that's crazy. So anyways, which was actually funny when I was walking to the stadium, because I didn't get there for kickoff. I missed like the first 2-3 minutes of the game. I could hear them announce the play that just happened while I had it up on my phone. But you could tell the O-line started to get beat a little bit, and that's kind of in that second, third quarter when the offense really started to slow down. You could see the pressure was starting to get home a little bit, which got a little concerning there, and you could see the offense really stalled when that happened. I think we scored, 3 points in the third quarter. And so there was a little bit of worry there, and you could see the
3 points, and it was that drive where you got the ball deep in TCU territory.
Yeah. And you could just see the offense was kind of starting to stall a little bit, and TCU had kind of figured out the defense, and that's kind of the beauty of football, right? Is the ebbs and flows of the game. You can dominate, but if you got to play a full 60. And luckily for the Cougs coming away, it did not feel like the Cougs this game was ever really in doubt for the Cougs, but overall it was just a really solid performance. But 3 plays. So the first one is Halsey's first interception in the first quarter. Honestly, probably not an overlooked play, right? But it was the drive right after the Cougars scored, and they go down, and then they get the interception. And the reason why I say it's kind of overlooked, maybe we're not overlooking it a ton. It was a big roll, and you could see, and anybody going back would be like, oh, you point at turnovers, and those are kind of big plays that you kind of remember. But in that moment in the stadium, it felt really different than going back and watching it on TV. At that moment when Halsey gets that first interception, you could feel it in the stadium, and it's hard to describe, but you could feel TCU fans just kind of start to drop their head and go, oh shit, here we go again, right? We've been turning the ball over a lot leading into this game. We're kind of getting beat pretty easily by this Houston team, even though the score's showing 7-0 at that point. You hadn't really moved the ball if you were TCU, and the Cougars just went down and just ran the ball down your throats and had a good first drive as well. You had the interception, and in the stadium, you could just kind of feel the atmosphere just kind of change. You could feel the Cougs start to get a little fired up. You could feel the U of H fans. There were a couple of clusters near me. I was by myself, but I could see a cluster in the 2 clusters in the section next to me, and then a couple of rows in front of me. There were some U of H fans, and we could all kind of we started looking at each other like, holy shit, what's happening here, right? And you could see the TCU fans kind of get a little panicked. So I don't know if it qualifies as overlooked, but I really felt it even
You make a good
rewatching the
case for
game.
it. You make a case, yeah.
Yeah, it really, you could just feel something was about to happen in this game after that interception. With 13:18 left in the second quarter, Cooper and Carter get to Hoover, and it sets up a nice 3rd and long. TCU was moving the ball decently well, nothing too crazy, but they get to Hoover, sets up the 3rd and long. Next play, actually, what was weird about the play is you see Cooper coming off the edge. He's coming on the quarterback blitz or the defensive back blitz, and the quarterback looks right at him. Hooper looks right at him, right at Carter, and it's so weird because anytime quarterbacks know that you throw where the blitz is coming from, right? Like that's what you do. And if you look at the DB coming off the edge, hit the guy right there. There's going to be a bailout option right there. Throw it where he's not, and he looked right at him, took the sack. That led to the second interception by Halsey. Basically was a throw punt, an arm punt, but at the end of the day, you put him in that 3rd and long after that sack. And again, you could just start to feel the momentum for the Cougs was really moving on. Also, I just want to point out on Halsey's second interception that we got home with 3 blitzers, which great, right? That play wasn't overlooked, anything like that. But on one of the interceptions, we created pressure with 3 guys, and that is just massive. If you can get to the quarterback with 3 guys, you're gonna win almost every time, right? You didn't even have to bring a 4th, right? You're getting there quick with 3 all day, every day. But my third play is 5:45 left in the game. That final drive, Donovan Smith is in, but 3rd and 1, Cougs are kind of in field goal range, but I don't know if I trust our field goal kicking this year. Cougs are probably at about the 30, if I recall. It's going to be a 45-yarder. I don't guarantee it. If a field goal in this drive ends the game, right? 3rd and 1, Burnett gets stuffed at the line, but keeps his feet going, bounces it out, finds a hole, picks up 4. And that was pretty much church. The Cougs needed probably one more first down to really ice it, which they got with the Donovan Smith keeper. But that 3rd and 1 there, you knew you were going to be able to kill at least another minute and a half off the clock. It was all but done. There was about 5 minutes left. If you don't pick that up, maybe you kick the field goal. But you give them another 5 to pick it up. You end up picking up the first down, so it didn't matter anyways. But that 3rd and 1 was pivotal in the game, and you may not think about it because the Cougs did pick up another first down. You think of the field goal, something like that. So, Sam, what were your 3?
So my first overlook play came from TCU's first offensive possession of this game. Easy to forget now that we have the whole picture of what was a very good Cougar defensive performance, that TCU was moving the ball reasonably well on their opening possession, got into Cougar territory, and on 3rd and 5, Josh Hoover, we call him Josh Cooper. Josh Hoover completes a pass to Jeremy Payne, who is tackled between 1 and 2 yards short of the line to gain on a really nice open field tackle by Hershey McLaurin. I think we've both beaten this point to death on here, but I won't stop. We continue to see a level of tackling, and certainly open field tackling, that we hadn't the prior couple seasons. That good open field tackle keeps TCU from getting a first down or getting close enough to the line to gain that the quarterback sneak might have actually worked on 4th down. Denying TCU an easy 4th down or the first down was really critical to, I think, the Cougs building confidence on the road. You aren't in the position that you're in on 4th down there without a very good open field tackle on the play before by McLaurin. So that's my first play. My second one was on the U of H offensive possession that ended with the second touchdown of the game. It was part of one of my favorite, if not my favorite, offensive sequences of the game. I think the big play from that drive, not the play I picked, but the big play from that drive was the 18-yard completion from Chris to Joseph Manjack, which ended up being the last play of the first quarter. But on the play immediately...
just to interrupt, is that the play where Manjack ran the comeback and he catches it and he kind of makes the guy miss?
Yes.
Is that the play I'm thinking of? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I'm thinking of the right drive.
Yeah. Not the play I picked. The play immediately prior to that, Chris had a nice, quick 9-yard completion to Jonah Wilson on first down. It wasn't a super long throw, but one that required some touch. And I think this will be a common theme when we talk specifically about the Cougar offense. Most importantly, one that Zion Chris put in a spot where only his guy could conceivably get the ball. I think that play was so important because it gives Chris just a little bit more confidence before the big play to Manjack that got you really deep in TCU territory. It allowed your play caller, Kevin Barbet, to have the luxury of a 2nd and 1. There's no better situation for a play caller than 2nd and short to go. You could take a slightly deeper shot downfield and not worry about getting behind schedule and getting confidence in a drive where you went up 2 touchdowns in the second quarter. I wasn't in the stadium like you, but I have to agree. I certainly understand the logic of, hey, that Halsey interception kind of started taking the air out of the building. I gotta imagine it was pretty fucking quiet after the Cougs went up 14-0. You gotta imagine that was a real scary point for a TCU team that's just like, oh yeah, these guys, look, we haven't looked great at times this year, but we're gonna beat Houston. Gotta be Houston. Houston hasn't been that good, and to go down 14-0, it had to be like a panic moment for everyone from the TCU sideline up to everyone wearing purple in the stand. So my third and final play was from the third scoring drive of the game, was a field goal drive. The Cougs went up 17-0. Wasn't even the longest run of the scoring drive. That was Zeon Chris having a 20-yard run at the start that got UVich set up pretty nicely in TCU territory. But the play I picked was a 12-yard run by Stacey Sneed. He lowers his shoulder at the end and gets an additional couple yards, got the Cougars in the red zone. It was a play that made me stand up from my seat watching this one in real time. And I think in one play embodied how much tougher this entire team is than the previous couple Cougar football teams. It was significant in that it was a run that I think firmly got you into field goal range, which you're probably only really comfortable, inside of 40 yards with this group of kickers. But I think one that meets the definition of overlooked play because it was a 12-yard run in a game where UVH had multiple longer and I guess more noticeable big offensive plays. So what I really like about this, Bobby, is we've done 6 games now worth of this segment. I don't think we've ever picked the same 3 plays. I don't think we've ever had one where we're like, oh yeah, we both organically ended up on the same one. And I think each time, I don't think there's one where I go back and be like, I think you or I really stretched the definition of that. That's a really cool table setter talking about the game itself. And we're going to start with the offense. And for once, it's going to be we're not starting with the offense because we want to get the most negative things we have to say out of our system. This was by far the most complete performance by this offense in 2024. Yes, technically you had more points against Rice, but I think considering your opponent, easily the best performance of the season. Bobby, why do you think things finally clicked for the offense on Friday in Fort Worth, and what things did you like the most from watching them?
I mean, I think it's pretty easy and an obvious thing to point out, and you know how much I hate just pointing to one thing in particular, or
that's the right answer.
Quarterback. I mean, Zeon Chris looked comfortable back there. He threw the ball well. I just want to point out that first touchdown throw was perfect. That throw could not have been a better throw from Zeon Chris. He couldn't have put that ball in any better of a spot than the one he did. I think wide receiver made an amazing catch on it as well. You have a little bit of a height advantage there, so took advantage of that. Maybe you throw that at the back pylon, maybe, but it was just out of reach of the defender. So quarterback play, I think, was a big deal. But the Cougs also were able to establish the run pretty well. You had Burnett getting 26 yards. Doesn't seem like a lot on 12 carries. But he kind of the bruiser, and he picked up yards when he needed to. They had to respect Zeon Chris. I texted you this during the game. There was a play where you saw the TCU defensive lineman untouched, and he's just kind of standing there, and he pauses for like a split second because he's playing some kind of contain. He's supposed to contain Zeon Chris, but he realizes, wait, I'm untouched. I need to go after the quarterback. Just that little bit of being scared about what Zeon Chris can do to you with his feet really changed the dynamic of the way you could just tell the way the defensive linemen were approaching. They couldn't go ears pinned back and just go after the quarterback. It was, wait a minute, I got to think about this for a second. There's a chance that I get burned if I don't. So I think that was a big plan, or a big thing there. I think he had time to throw, and he made decisions quickly. I think the O-line played really well in this game. There were some times, right? I think I pointed one out to you where they ran a stunt. TCU ran a stunt, and you just saw they run a stunt. The guard, perfect, plays it perfectly. Left tackle is like, oh, this guy disappeared in front of me. I don't have anyone to block. and then you watch Zeon Chris get sacked. But overall, I think it was Zeon Chris was quick with his decisions. He had time to throw. He was able to create time himself. I guess I'll sit here and eat a little bit of crow. I was like, I don't know if he's really the problem, or if Donovan Smith is really the problem. This O line, it's hard to evaluate it. Well, guys, Zeon Chris looked like the truth on Friday. 12 of 15 or 15 of 18. Sorry, I can do math. 15 of 18 for 141, 82.6 quarterback rating. You could just see it was different. That 71-yard touchdown run, that was a dagger, right? You're in the stadium, you go, maybe UH goes down here, kicks a field goal. Next thing you know, they score a touchdown. You're like, oh, wait a minute. And that is probably the most excited I've been watching Cougar football in a very long time. In the stadium, I stood up and I was like, go, Zeon, go! Because I'm very cognizant of, like, people around me when I'm at games. Like, I don't want to stand up, especially on away games. That's a way that you start to get into a fight. That play, he broke it. And I was sitting high enough that I could see that he had nobody near him. So it was just like, go, go, go. So I think that was a big, to your point, it's the right answer. He made a huge difference, and the offense just clicked. They had the time. They could do what they wanted to. They ran what we thought this offense would look like. I think going into the season, if you would have told me that we were going to pass the ball 20 times, we were going to have 44 runs, granted that includes sacks, I would think that's how we're going to have to win football games this year. And to do it and it looked good is exactly what I wanted to see out of this team. What about you? What'd you like and not like from the offense?
I mean, like you, obviously it all starts with Zeon Chris. This was the Chris I expected to see when he committed to the Cougs last offseason. Some work to do as a passer, but capable of making good throws, decent arm, an ability to move the pocket, obviously with his legs, and be a super explosive runner when the offense needs it. It's hard not to be the highlight when your quarterback has a 70-plus yard touchdown run, for that not to be the game highlight, but I thought he made some really fantastic throws. I'm really glad you singled out that first touchdown pass, because that was an eye-opener for you, because that's a pass that required some touch, and he put it where only his guy could get it. And I'm not going to turn all my thoughts in the offense into one long referendum on the guy who's been U of H's primary starting quarterback the last season and a half, because Donovan Smith played a big part in sealing the win late. But I don't think I'm being unfair in saying that you didn't really see Donovan make that throw with enough regularity in his time as the starting quarterback here. Maybe this is the staff empowering him a bit. I'm really curious. The jump we saw, because we talked about literally one episode ago, Bobby, like how does this guy who is a pretty promising redshirt freshman starting quarterback in the Sun Belt in the games prior to this one not look at all confident as a passer out there, not look like he's even out there to pass, look like a running back getting a direct snap, to go from that to a guy who, no exaggeration, and again, that run was a big part of this game, and Zeon being able to change this game as a runner was important, but the Cougs got a 2-score lead because of Zeon Chris's ability to throw the ball. Like, let's make no mistake about it. Like, the passing yards and the box score might not lead you to think like, oh, this was a good passing performance. He wasn't asked to do it a ton. This was a good passing performance by Zeon Chris. This was a guy who did good things in the pass game. It wasn't just a hold your breath and they occasionally did something good there. This was, you chose to pass this number of times, and when you did, it was extremely effective. I mean, was the staff empowering him a bit? And yeah, like we pointed out, how weird the prior several games looked to this one, because even though Zeon Chris is fairly young, it's not like this is his first time getting meaningful quarterback reps in a game. He started a good chunk of last season before a foot injury knocked out his last November. And I've been pretty harsh in criticizing UH's offensive coordinator, Kevin Barbet. We'll just add, when you get shut out 2 games in a row, some of that is invited, but I don't think I can praise him enough this week. Obviously, Zeon Chris executing as well as he did was a big part of the offensive success. Any offensive play caller will tell you he's only as good as the quarterback leading the guys in the huddle. You didn't ask Zeon Chris to throw the ball 40, 50 times a game, and that is fine. Fine. Like, that wouldn't have been a good plan for a guy making his first career U of H start on the road against an opponent who's shown, and still showed definitely in this one, susceptibility to the run. This wasn't Chris in the offense succeeding in spite of a mediocre game plan. It was a very good game plan that was executed even better by the players. Plenty of other guys, though, I think worthy of being singled out besides Zion Chris. First of all, I believe very many career rushing touchdowns in the Scarlet Albino for Rashawn Stanford. On that touchdown run, Stanford still found the end zone through basically, I think the entirety of his run was filled with contact. It's crazy how much of his yardage Stanford this year has come after contact. Like, imagine this guy, once he starts getting like decent size holes to run through. You saw that low center of gravity too, something we've seen in the past. Like, UH has had a lot of smaller running backs over the almost 20 years U of I have been fans of this program, but he's a smaller guy does not equal easy to bring down, especially when it's someone Stanford size. And we saw it there. I'm glad you singled out Burnett. I think if you had to guess for the fan base at large, the biggest challenge now is not getting completely over your skis about Zion Chris. It's like, hey, this guy still has started less than 10 career games. He still has room to develop. And not that I'm not excited about Zion Chris, but I think for me, the thing I'm having to not get over my skis about is how I feel about the combination of Rashawn Stanford and Jamarian Burnett in this program. Both guys, freshmen. Burnett, I'm glad you singled him out, because I think if you didn't watch this game, you wouldn't appreciate the contributions of 12 carries, 26 yards. You'd see that and be like, it didn't sound like he had a very good game, but he was asked pretty much exclusively to carry the ball in short yardage situations. To have a guy who's 1 year removed from playing high school football be ready to run against grown-ass men, I think that's really impressive, and I think speaks to a long-term 1-2 combo in the backfield. It's going to be very, very exciting. You got another year. Stacey Snead after this mentioned his run earlier, so I'm not trying to diminish his contributions either, but that's a really exciting running game, man. It's not just Zion Chris, though. He's kind of the tip of the spear there. Zion Chris take, if you'll let me, Bobby.
Yep.
I don't think we've had good runners since Greg Ward. Like De'Aaron King and Clayton Tune, both were guys that you had to respect as a number in the run game. I think if Clayton Tune hadn't had the injury history he had, I think you have seen even more of him doing that over his career. I still don't think we've had a runner as explosive as Zion Chris at quarterback since Greg Ward. Like just
I agree.
His ability, like, again, the other guys I mentioned, ability to be a number in the run game, had to respect them, made exciting plays with their feet, but to house it from 70 yards out like Chris did for that fourth score, and I think really almost the backbreaker for TCU, even though they had chances to get back in this game in the second half, not something we've had before. That's what's such a tantalizing dimension of his game. You got to see Malik Carr also involved in the pass game, and that is a guy I want to keep seeing involved in this offense, even against Big 12 defenses. I don't believe there are a lot of guys out there who can, or defenses or opposing players who can keep that guy from not occasionally getting open like he did to positive effect against TCU. I mean, if I have any criticism, you got a bit more conservative in the second half, though this defense is good enough that I think you can at least wrap your head around doing that a bit more. And I'm a little sentimental. And while I would have loved for Zion Chris not to have had any kind of in-game injury stuff going on, you have to kind of enjoy Donovan Smith, who's had a tough season. He's had a tough Cougar career, and it's just been criticized, not entirely incorrectly, because being a college quarterback, that's part and parcel of being that. But I think it's cool to see this guy come in there cold, lead this offense down the field for a clock-bleeding, game-icing field goal drive in the fourth quarter. Really cool stuff. From what you told me, he was very much engaged on even last night. He was very much engaged with the offense. That's tough.
Oh,
man.
yeah.
You're a competitor. Like Donovan Smith wants to be the successful starting quarterback of this team. More badly than you or I could even fathom. This guy's a high level athlete. Hasn't always gone right for him, but this guy isn't a Division I quarterback. Because all of his coaches over here like his personality. Like it. Even if you are a team guy, it sucks to see this guy's doing way better. This guy's honestly doing awesome. They're not going to be pulling me out of the game for this guy. To have him, again, from what you and everyone else has told me, still be engaged and still hyping his guys up, and then going cold when his team really needs him and lead a drive where you really just needed to bleed clock and get one more score and truly put this game on ice. That's cool stuff. The offense didn't ask him to throw a lot there. He had that nice run on third and long. But that's the cool stuff. Like that's the kind of sports stories I really like. What are you gonna say? Sorry.
Dude, one of the what I meant with they were all engaged, it was that final defensive drive, and the offense was just on the sideline, jumping up and down, going crazy, talking mad shit. They were talking so much shit anytime anybody ran a play. And the number one person talking shit was Donovan Smith.
Love it.
I mean, the ball would, if somebody would come in, he's there. He's like, you die. Like, you could just see him going at it with the TCU guys. So he was hyped. They were winning, and ultimate team guy move. All of that. You said it perfectly. But here's the other thing. Donovan Smith lost a lot last year, man. It sucks to lose. He's been out there where we've been getting our ass kicked. Even if you don't play, even if the other guy goes out it's more fun in the locker room when you win. You're having a better time when you win. Like, it's just, I know I'm saying the obvious thing here, right? It's more fun when you win, but like, you could tell he wanted to win, and there was, just because he's out there with his friends and he's out there, you can just tell he is the leader of this team. And we've heard that from the coaches all year, right? That's one thing that they love about him, is how he's the leader of the team. You can see that even if he's not playing. You can see
really
that
cool stuff.
he is one of those kind of guys. Yep.
Same kind of general thought for your kicker, Jack Martin, who's once again your starting place kicker, hit 3 field goals to help secure the win. They were all field goals that I think Jack Martin should hit, but I'm still happy he got kind of his redemption in this game as well. And my last 2 thoughts, I said this to you via text message right before we went on air. It's not perfect yet. This offensive line, which was after week 1, just this 5-alarm fire of, oh my God, I don't think I've ever seen a worse performance from a group was O-line to now. Incredible amount of improvement. And also, I think given the career resume of the 5 or 6 guys who have mostly started versus you want to look at the 5 or 6 guys who started most of last season, I think you're getting a lot more positive stuff out of that unit. I mean, certainly in the run game. I mean, you've probably already had 2 rushing performances this year, just about better than anything you did last year. I mean, God, just running the ball was such a trial, and not a trial that went really well during the Holgerson era. You're already getting more of that unit. Is it perfect? No. I mean, I wouldn't say all 3 of the sacks that Zeon Chriss took were on Chris or on the O-line. I just feel like you're getting more out of that unit in terms of who's starting there. What do you think realistically this group can do? And considering these guys have not played together as a unit in a game at all until this season, multiple guys weren't even in this program that are starting for you last year. I mean, you have one guy who started a significant amount of games this year. Your center, Pancake Hunter, was a good recruit who did start at the very tail end of last year, but your center is a guy who started less than 10 career games. Like, all signs that would point to this unit is going to be very, very bad this year. And I think they're a whole lot better than very, very bad. Is that kind of a backhanded compliment? Sure. But I think it is pretty incredible. It's pretty incredible we are here 5 weeks later where I'm saying something positive about the offensive line and their recent performance, and you're not just like, you're crazy, man. Like, this is like, it's significant improvement. And I think it speaks to a more coherent overall, just like this offense knows what it wants to be, kind of like you were saying at the very top. Is it always going to work as well as this? Probably not. Hope I'm wrong there, but probably not. But there's a clear identity. You see what they want to be. And I think by the end of the season, certainly won't be anyone's best Cougar offense they've ever seen, unless this is your first season. But a clear plan for what this offense is. I think we're seeing it. And I think even with the last 2 shutouts, I think there are still reasons for optimism beyond just this game specifically. You're starting to see the vision of what this offense is supposed to be. And that's pretty exciting. That is pretty exciting. You didn't just win this game via smoke and mirrors. Sure, you now have some tape on Zeon Chriss, but I mean, Zeon Chriss has had tape on him for a while out there. Zeon Chriss did start a chunk of last season. There's believe it or not, Sunbelt film available for any opposing coach out there who wants it. So I think that's the exciting big picture thing for me. It doesn't feel like there was a fluke. Like, will every game be as good as this? Hope so, but probably not. But you see a clear vision of what they want this offense to be, and that's what's so exciting to me.
Well, let me have 2 more little things on the offense.
Yeah, man, go for it.
I was listening to one of our favorite podcasts that isn't the Scott and Holman podcast, Split Zone Duo. And did you know, they said this and I had no idea, Zeon Chriss had the furthest in-air throw completion in FBS last year?
He did.
I had no idea.
Way to work Monday, yeah.
Yeah, I heard that. I was like, Really? I did not expect that. So maybe, we were criminally underrating his throwing here. So thought that was just a little interesting little tidbit to kind of share. Even if I knew you heard it, I still wanted to kind of get that out
Oh
there. And
yeah,
then
yeah.
two, you're starting to see the proof of concept. This game is the proof of concept for this offense. You're starting to see that this offense can be successful when done correctly. Big air quotes there, right? Big air quotes over when done correctly. That's a huge caveat to throw here. When done correctly, you're seeing that it can be successful and that it will be fun to watch. That was the other thing. Was the offense was fun to watch on Friday night. It was fun. I actually enjoyed. Was it Case Keenum in 2008 throwing 60-yard bombs to Patty Edwards? No, but it's fun. It was a fun offense to watch. There wasn't a ton of tempo. There was enough to keep it interesting, but you didn't have to run hurry up. You don't have to bomb it out. You can kind of play this different style than what we're used to, and it'll look good when done correctly. It looks good, and it is successful. So hard to be even close to anything near upset with that.
Fully agree. I hate to give them second billing because this is also a very good Cougar defensive performance as well. You can make an argument, even though, yes, you allowed fewer points to Rice. Yes, you allowed fewer points to Oklahoma, though still good performance. Oklahoma looks like they have their offensive issues. Definitely your most complete performance. We knew coming in, TCU had an explosive passing attack, almost certainly the best one this team had seen in the 6-game season at this point. Offense gets lead billing because, we finally had a chance this season to talk about the offense doing well against a decent opponent. We had to take that. But for the 4th time in 6 games now, Bob, you got a performance from the Cougar defense that you could find very little fault in. And I would say for the 5th time, which throw in the UNLV game there, your defense at least gave you a chance to win this football game. Not to get too big picture on a little picture situation that's exciting about this one, but consider what I just said and consider what a disaster this side of the ball was the previous 2 seasons and how now this defense is roughly 85-90% new faces, and it continues to be absurd that Shile Wood has this defense playing this well this quickly. It's almost impossible to overstate how ahead of schedule the Cougar defense is. So what were your big takeaways from this defensive performance against TCU?
We got turnovers. That was huge, right? It has felt like, I didn't do the actual research on this, but it feels like we've gotten our butts whipped in the turnover game and in the turnover numbers, and we got 2 good interceptions. One, again, I said was the kind of like an arm punt. It was on 3rd and long, and he threw it, 40, 50 yards down the field, and it was intercepted. But still, you get that interception. The ball kind of bounced your way a little bit on fumble recoveries. I know that's not defense related. You were getting to the quarterback. Hoover didn't have a lot of time to throw. When he did, he was able to pick us apart. But you saw pressure getting to the quarterback in a way that we haven't seen since probably 2021. That 2021 team, that U of H defensive line, defensive front. It was really good to see Michael Batten after what looked like a career ender last week when he jumped up and he lands. I think he had a couple of sacks. He had a fumble recovery. Guy just have yourself a game, buddy. Yeah. Batten recovers a fumble. Batten's 6 tackles and a sack. Just what a game by Michael Batten. And let me just talk about how we have a guy on our team who you could make an argument that he could be, except for one guy. There's one guy who plays for Colorado who could make an argument for being Defensive Player of the Year over him. AJ Halsey, 7 tackles, pass deflection, just 2 interceptions. What else can you ask for out of a defensive player, out of one of your DBs? What an absolute stud he's been this year. AJ Halsey has been an amazing, amazing player this year. Just want to shout him out. I know I seem to give him a shout out every week, but the guy is bringing it every week, and he is just performing in a way that we just haven't seen from a defensive player in a while.
AJ Halsey was one of those guys when kind of the 24 roster was forming, and you're like, okay, who's going to be back? who has eligibility to get back and all that stuff. And it was clear that, okay, he's not going to be one of the first group of guys leaving. And it's just like, no one really stood out in last year's defense because, last year's defense wasn't especially good, but he was one of those guys like, okay, but I could see him being a promising guy to build around. I could see him with a better scheme and guys around him playing better to be capable of being a standout player in a good defense. He's been everything there and then some. I think we've kind of skewed heavier to talking about the defensive front when we talked about the Cougar defensive performances, but all the guys we've highlighted from that group, AJ Halsey's been as important, as big of a part of this defense's successes as any of those guys who singled out. And you mentioned the turnover luck, and this could be an offense or defense. And it's true. There were some fumbles that had fortuitous bounces U of H's way. Josh Hoover is extraordinarily lucky that he did not throw 3 picks in this one. This was on TCU's first touchdown drive because he throws a ball. I almost think the U of H guy was surprised it was going to him, doesn't get it, and then immediately TCU has 2 big chunk plays, I believe a run and then a pass immediately after that. So yes, the Cougars got some fortunate, I think, fumble luck offensively that they really haven't gotten prior to this season, but I think TCU was lucky. They also had, I would say, the worst non-called hold. It was on Keith Cooper. Ended up being their second touchdown drive. I've believe it or not, I have mostly trained myself from being the yells at TV while watching game guys. Certainly about a call because it's just like, no, the ref in Fort Worth cannot hear me yell at my flat screen. But the right tackle is holding Cooper. I'm just like, it's a fucking hold. Loud enough that I'm sure my neighbor could have heard. Like, I was very unhappy about that one, but a great performance. Talked about Michael Batten, like you said, what a single out one play here. I have not seen many guys less ready for contact than it was on 3rd and very long. A TCU running back is trying to do blitz pickup on Michael Batten, and it's like the guy's barely there. I don't think it's for lack of trying. I don't think it was like, oh, the guy shy away from contact. It was the guy was like one of those little half-ass speed bumps you see sometimes. Just like, yeah, I know your intention is to slow people down, but I don't think you're doing that. And yeah, great play that bad there as part of a game where we had a lot of great ones. We've said it on here before. This defense didn't have a Michael Batten on it last year, and it is very clear the difference that this guy's making. I almost had this one as one of my overlooked plays, Bobby. Carlos Allen, it ended up being on a TCU scoring drive, which is kind of why I put it in my little pool of like, hey, this could be an overlooked play. But he makes a lateral play to him and someone else in the open field to get Josh Hoover, the TCU quarterback, when he tried to do a keeper there. And
I had that play written down too. Yeah,
great minds. A play with a linebacker does it, you're like, okay, like, did decent play there, but you expect that, but not like a 5'11", 300-pound like defensive tackler. Like a guy that size shouldn't be moving like this. It is remarkable. Like, this guy was playing for FCS Kennesaw State until this year. There are in this era where you have fewer diamonds in the rough, you have fewer guys that get overlooked by the big recruiting industrial complex. It is incredible to see this guy. Like, oh yeah, this guy is a Big 12 defensive talent. This guy should be on a good Big 12 defense. And up until this year was playing for Kennesaw State. I mean, great eval by the staff, but obviously a great athlete who was clearly ready for a higher level of competition than the one he was facing. That was just one of those plays that I wanted to single out there. Hershey McLaurin, mentioned him for the overlook play. Can't believe buried lead on this one. Really nice play. Momentum shifting in the gameplay. Punching the ball at J.P. Richardson's
what a play.
Arms. Yeah, I feel like any momentum that at that point TCU was trying to claw back, I think that was the last point in the game where I really felt worried about the outcome. Really felt like, oh man, like TCU could get control of this game. Then Hershey McLaurin punches the ball back out. Cougars get it. You get the lead back to 8 points, even though you probably would have liked a touchdown that deep in their territory. But great play by this defense to get the ball back to the offense, kill any momentum that your opponent had. Really, really go in there. McLaurin's a guy I feel like we mention almost weekly, and I think rightfully so. You have a returning guy like Halsey who he singled out, rightfully so. Like, he's someone who clearly benefited from the new scheme, from a staff with a better idea of how to build a successful college defense. But you didn't have Hershey McLaurin. Like, you didn't have Michael Batten last year. You didn't have Hershey McLaurin last year. And boy, this defense looks a whole lot better for those two guys being here. We've been beating the drum on this pod all season that even when some games like UNLV or Iowa State end with not great looking opponent rushing totals, this is still a capital G good run defense. It didn't hurt that you put good complementary football. You put TCU in a multi-score hole and probably less willing to run the football than if this was a close game for a lot longer. But they were never able to really run things balanced. And when they did, yeah, Cam Cook had some nice runs for TCU, but never really were able to change the game with them running the ball. Anytime, unless you were facing vintage Michael H. May, rest in peace, Texas Tech, if your opponent is running for under 100 yards, chances are it's a good game. When you're forcing as many turnovers, like you mentioned earlier, chances are it's a good game. The big stat heads really struggle to find sometimes, like, okay, what correlates with winning? Like if a team does this, like if a team passes for more yards, if a team more penalties, like what correlates with winning? And the thing that I feel like they found the most correlation is turnovers. If you are giving the ball away less than your opponent, chances are you're going to win. Chances are you're going to win by a pretty decent margin. That's what the Cougars did on Friday night. This was TCU's lowest passing output of the 2024 season, their lowest points output in the current season. I mean, for any of that team's faults, TCU hadn't been held under 30 points by anyone this season. The Cougars did it, and the Cougars did it by a pretty good margin, which that's really cool. Something that I don't think is offense or defense specific, if you'll allow me, that probably should talk about at this point, Bobby. The Cougs didn't beat the Cougs.
Yep,
Cougs
absolutely.
didn't beat the Cougs.
Yep.
I can't imagine how happy Willie Fritz is that didn't have a special teams penalty, didn't have very many penalties, period. And I honestly wasn't a big fan of some. Like I remember just right after they didn't call OPI, which I don't think it was a really blatant OPI, but I thought TCU's first touchdown was a little OPI on their receiver there. To not call that, and then the next possession, U of H gets a real sketchy defensive PI called on them. Can't say I was very happy with that. You know, but this is not my extended bitch about the ref segment. This is to say that even the penalties that U of H got, I didn't look at that and be like, oh, what's that guy doing there? Just like, I sort of see why they made the call. It's kind of borderline. I'm not mad at the player for it. I don't think the player did anything bad there. I just, you saw how good this team can be if they're not just shooting themselves in the foot constantly. Like you saw that if you're not playing with that handicap that you kind of like, even the Rice game, there were some sequences of the Rice game where you committed a good number of penalties. Like the penalty yardage wasn't great at the end of that, but it's like, okay, like you played better in other facets and you were also playing a frankly terrible opponent. Like that can make up for it. You weren't playing a terrible opponent this week. You were the more disciplined team. Is it going to be this good every week coming to the offense? Probably not. Like you will probably have it, hopefully not many, but at least one or two more games this year where just penalties are a problem. Even the best teams oftentimes have problems, or at least one or two games that have problems with penalties. But like the offense, you could see the vision. You could see a more disciplined, purposeful team in this game. And ideally, by the end of the season, and certainly the seasons to come, you're seeing something like that most Saturdays. Like I think that's what makes this win in the big picture so valuable. Is I think it wasn't just okay. We're happy to beat Rice, and we finally got that. This is we beat a Big 12 opponent. We did it by being the more disciplined, more purposeful, the tougher team. And that was something this fan base, I think, needed to see when it was kind of really at a low ebb the week before at 1-4 overall and back-to-back shutouts for the first time in 30 years. It was really, this was a win this fan base needed to see. This is a win to kind of calm the nerves. Hey, like this season still might be tough. You still might be 13th, 14th, 15th best in this league when it's all said and done, though I have hope for this team to be better than that. But you could see the vision. You could see what this program can and I think will eventually be under Willie Fritz. And that was cool. And I think embodied by the penalties. So any other defensive thoughts, big picture thoughts you got there, bud? I got one more when you're done. So you do your thing.
No. You've said a lot of just how I should feel about this game and how Cougar fans should feel about this game. There is the Cougs didn't beat the Cougs, right? I think that's been one of our biggest complaints. And no special team penalties, if I recall.
These penalties, buddy.
Which has just been one of those things that, for some reason, special team penalties feel worse than a regular penalty because, like, you're running down the field, throw a block, let the guy. He can call a fair catch. Like, let him. Like, if you get beat, I'd rather him call the fair catch and not get the hold than you hold him and then him still have to call a fair catch, right? So that's big. Just overall, it just feels like this team, this is starting to, it's honestly how you kind of expected this year to go, right? You come out, you want to win that first game against UNLV. Maybe you think you can out talent them, but that UNLV team is starting to show that they are actually a really good football team. And you knew that the team that you saw in September wasn't going to be, or late August, early September. I think it was like the first, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Wasn't going to be the team that you saw in mid October. And to be honest, it's starting to show, right? We're starting to really be able to tell that this is not the same team. It already looks wildly different than it did in the first game or two of the year. And you could see the last two games that the defense has really started to turn, and we needed to get the offense. And this offense looks different than it did the week before, which looked different than the week before, which looked different than the week before.
Yeah. I think something I said on this show, and this is the most enjoyable thing, though. I hope we reach the point where Cougar men's basketball is where opponents are consoling themselves like, oh, well, Houston's really good. You know, man, we just had to wash that. And I think it was like, for some reason, it was the K-State game last year. We just ate their lunch at the Fertitta Center last year. And they're just like, you know what, you just gotta throw that. That's Houston. That's just what Houston basketball does. I would love for Houston football to reach that point. Until then, though, it was just absolutely glorious. I don't really have a special dislike of the TCU fan base. I want to beat them maybe like 10% more because it's another Texas school, but I don't have a strong negative or positive feelings towards TCU. Great to see that fan base just absolutely lose their mind from losing to us. Like,
what did I tell you?
Know that it's like, oh man, you did, like, it wasn't just a loss. Like, you made these guys question their season. You just removed the life, the hope that Horned Frog fans had for this season. Like, that's just that was fantastic. That was chicken soup for my soul. Even as someone who doesn't really have a special strong dislike to TCU, would love to kind of do a repeat of this in a month and change against Baylor. Do the final nail in the coffin of Dave Aranda's time there, and to beat those fools a second season in a row. But
I'm telling you, that is going, if we win, he is gone.
Oh yeah.
I will bet money that if they lose to us, he will be gone.
Yeah,
and you could see what I was talking about. And it seems like our guest last week, who was great, kind of really scoffed at the idea that it would make his seat warm, or that it would be.
I'm talking about Dave Aranda.
No. And I'm saying
yeah.
Going back to TCU's coach, it's very, you could see it was kind of one of those things where it was like, oh yeah, no, if we lose to you guys, it'll be okay. But I think most reasonable people, and it's like, then you go to his whatchamacallit, you go to his Twitter page after the game, and it was crazy. They hated it. They were so mad. And I like the TCU fan base. I grew up in DFW. I went to TCU games as a kid sometimes, occasionally. So, like, I like them. They're cool. They're fine. They were super nice to me at the game.
A G5 team that won so often that the Big Boys Club had to let them in.
I had no choice.
Super aspirational programs like U of H was at one time,
at
least for me.
Yep. But it was just, you're right. It is funny watching them just absolutely, completely melt down.
And they're a private school, so we'll never truly know the dollar amount. But man, imagine being like financially tied. I mean, I guess you don't have to imagine that hard. We were just financially tied for large sums of money to Dana Holgerson, which I don't think it's any better than that. Certainly. But imagine being tied that much money to Sonny Dyke. So I'm sorry. Like, he's had some good offenses. He's like won at some interesting places. Like winning at Cal that year he had Jared Goff. Winning at Cal is hard. Winning at La Tech, like that last year he was there, that offense just scorched us in 2012. They were such a fun team to watch. But like, you look at his career, this is like it's a guy who wins 7-8 games a year. Like, that's what Sonny Dykes does. They win 7-8 games a year. He has exciting offense, defense optional, and just never a team capable of really winning at a high level. A team that's going to often beat itself and stuff like that. So whatever happens to U of H the rest of the year, you could just, I guess take some solace in the fact that the right guy, the right staff are in charge right now. And that what you saw on Friday night Might not be every single week the rest of the season, but this will be this program. Willie Fritz, I'm putting my line in the sand here. We will win again. Like this game, this will be the fucking norm for this program. I swear to you.
Yep.
I believe it with everything in me that's going to be the case. And that's what's so cool about it. And so it's a good
I agree.
Oh, hold on.
Yeah.
Gotta brag.
We can end it. I was going to say.
Gotta talk about our picks here. Obviously, normally more robust schedule here, but both of us have had a tiny fraction of the amount of time for prep this episode as usual. And I don't want to honestly disrespect the other sports. Notable stuff to talk about. We will catch up next episode. We've got a football off week here coming up, so we got plenty of time to catch up on everything else because there's a fair amount of stuff happening in Cougar athletics. Bobby was in person to watch the tennis program. The women's golf program did something awesome. Cougar volleyball is obviously in season and doing good stuff there. So we'll come back and talk about all that stuff, but this is going to be a rare football only episode from us. Going to close here talking about our picks, our weekly segment, Down with the Pickness. Today, just a review of our picks from last week. I had probably my pick of the year, and yet, Bobby, I still trail you. You have just over 1320 pod bucks.
I am the betting god.
I just have over 1253 despite my correct prediction of U of H winning this one outright with the money line. So they paid out 5.5 to 1. So this paid out for my 35 fake pod bucks bet, 227 fake dollars.
We're not encouraging you to be a gambler, though. We're not encouraging.
We're not encouraging, but somehow Bobby and I are both multiple hundreds of dollars up on our imaginary starting total. So I picked that correctly. We also both correctly picked the game total under 49.5 points. Just got under at 30-19. Difference being Bobby also correctly took U of H to the point spread, and I incorrectly took the first half under of 25.5 points, which was my biggest of the three bets I made this season. I am an even 500 this year. I'm as good as a coin flip. I'm 6-6. My co-host here is a much healthier 6-4 on the season.
Let's go.
So I'm trailing in both record and imaginary pod bucks, but I will take some small solace in the fact that for the first time in my life, not that I'm a current active sports bettor, I am up significant amounts of money on my starting total. So that's clearly
that's a positive. That's a positive.
I have to only bet on U of H. It has to only be imaginary money. If the real money comes in, my mojo and your mojo clearly both.
That is correct. That is correct. That is correct.
So
are we done?
About win, Bobby. It's a really fun time.
So much better. It's so much better. Especially like going back and look. I say this every week, but going back and trying to find three plays is so much easier when it's kind of a close game, whether we win or we lose. Like it was much easier to find them during the OU game than it was losing 34-0. You're just like, well, this was over at halftime. I got to find three plays that influence the outcome of this game. This game was never in doubt.
And just the fact that rewatching the Cincy game didn't enjoy any of watching it. And the fact that I had to do at least a 1.5 rewatch of that. Not fun. Not complaining about what I do. Like I enjoy podcasting you very much. Good times and bad. Like if we were like I think about like the Alabama loss to Vandy and just like whatever. If the circumstances happened to be that I was an Alabama fan or I went there for my undergrad or something like that, whatever. Cool. But I almost feel like that's almost a more miserable experience because it's just like, if we don't win 11 to 12 games, I'm just miserable about it. And that's
I'm disappointed.
Really a bad way to be a fan. Yeah, exactly. So just,
national titles are fun though.
Oh yeah, no, I wouldn't seize at U of H somehow in the next 10 years turning itself into a new
I kind of think of that's kind of our basketball program right now. We're kind of like that. If we lose to a team like a Vanderbilt, a basketball equivalent of Vanderbilt, we'd be like, what the fuck? So
were you not a lot? I mean, I guess no one technically saw that one because it was COVID, but you were around for the ECU game, were you not? Anyway, not to bring up bad memories.
Anyway,
enjoy the winning pod. That's all we got this week. Bobby, take us home.
Well, guys, that is it for this week's podcast. Even though it's shortened, we had to shorten it up like Sam said. He's busy with work. I'm literally in a hotel room. If you're watching on video, you can see my dirty clothes. So that is it for this week's podcast. But if you do want to reach out to us, you can always find us on social media. Sam primarily runs that account. Dustin is still on it a little bit, but you can find us on Twitter at SH Podcast.
Actually, Dustin's been tweeting more since he stopped being a regular host. We'll see if that correlates.
You can find us at SH Podcast on Twitter. You can find me if you're looking for just me. You can find me at #1 Coog. You can also find just Dustin on Blue Sky, podcast.bsky.social. You can find him there. And if you hate social media, if you decided to give up social media in 2024, good for you, first of all. Second, you can always email us on shpodcast@gmail.com. You can always reach us there. If you have listened to all of this and you were like, hey, those guys, he's podcasting from his hotel room, and Sam's podcasting in between work events. Those guys hustle for this. I want to throw them some money. You can always find us on patreon.com, SH Podcast on there. Minimum $5 gets you premium post-game content, gets you some other fun stuff that we are kind of hoping to get done at some point in our lives when our schedules meet up. $5 is the minimum. Maximum is unlimited. Depends on who you are. If you want to give us $100, you can. If you want to give us $5,000, $5 million, $500 million.
If you work for Sovereign Wealth Fund and want to get into the podcast space, shoot us an email, shpodcast@gmail.com.
If you're very interested in a podcast that some of your employees might be interested in because Houston and all of that, maybe, I don't know, you can always reach out to us via Patreon or shpodcast@gmail.com. We would love to talk to you. And after this about an hour-long podcast, even though we said we were going to cut it short, after about an hour long of podcasting, it is time for me to go eat. It is time for Sam to go do his work thing. But we will not leave without saying,
go Cougs.
All right. Go Coogs. Let's go.